and it was the same thing again, right? He fell into the addiction even more. He was actually living in the streets.
Mhm.
I remember, grabbing his stuff, and it was all because he chose the drugs and the alcohol over his kids and his family. My dad was in and out of rehab all the time, so this was something that I was already used to. And, like once you fully surrender your life to God, you will learn that your plans are nothing compared to what He has in store for you, right? Like, even if you're older, younger, wherever in life you may be, just know that God has a plan for you, and don't give up. Really surround yourself with the people that love you, people that encourage you, people that want to see you do better.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Revival Fire podcast. My name is Victor, and I'm your host. We're on episode 4 tonight, and I have a very special guest tonight who we're gonna talk testimony tonight, just about the great and powerful things that God does in our lives. And I have Bianca with me tonight. How are you doing, Bianca?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm super excited to get into your testimony, and like I said, just be a witness of the goodness of God and how He has his hand in our life in so many ways. So, I mean, if you want to just take it away, and we'll kind of get started.
Yeah. Like you said, He has His hand in many ways that sometimes we don't even realize. So I'm here to tell a little bit about my story and see if this can maybe impact somebody like it did to me. So as Victor said, my name is Bianca. I
You don't have to be nervous. It's okay. How about you tell the audience maybe how you grew up. I mean, we don't have to go into like all the details. We don't need to know the city or your date of birth or anything like that. But maybe just like earlier childhood. Did you grow up in church? Maybe.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in church. Well, I did, but not to the extent that I see it now with like my little cousins and stuff like that. So I grew up in like a Catholic church, so it was like very different, I would say, than what I'm used to now.
So would it be like maybe what is it called? Someone said it the other day, but it's like a Christmas and Easter kind of church going experience.
Yeah. I mean, I was baptized when I was smaller, and then I did my first communion.
Right.
So it was only on every other Sunday, or maybe like once every other month. Like, it was very sporadical. But that was the extent of my knowledge.
Okay. So first of all, we have to say that now that you're a born again believer,
Mhm.
and what you would call Christian, now we know kind of, and just to put this like disclaimer kind of deal, but we're planning on getting baptized this summer, right?
Mhm.
So redoing the baptism, we don't really believe that baptism should be done as a child or as a baby, because then you're not really making that decision on your own. Like, I mean, do you remember making that decision?
No, I don't.
It's really made for for the children who do it at that age. What I guess, like, since you have like that Catholic upbringing,
Mhm.
what is maybe some major differences between the two now that you're a born again Christian and compared to Catholicism?
I think sometimes it's just about how God is perceived, and then the people around you. I think it's definitely a difference that I see sometimes. And honestly, just like the biggest thing would probably be like worship, and reverencing Him. And I mean, one of the biggest things, that I can really point out.
Okay, so I mean, I've been to mass maybe like twice, maybe twice in my life, so I can't like really like, I'm not like the leading expert on it, on mass and Catholicism in general, but there's a huge difference. It's very I guess the only word I could put is ritualistic in their services and stuff. So yeah, I mean, to say that worship, or like what we see as worship and praise, and having music and people clapping, and it's definitely a lot louder. So that is a pretty big difference. But you have a Catholic, I guess, like somewhat upbringing.
Mhm.
Um, but how about as you grew up a little bit
Yeah.
older?
Yeah, so my childhood was, I mean, from what I remember, a regular childhood up until I was 9 years old. So, traditional family household. I have a younger brother and, was raised with both my parents up until I was 9 years old. And that's kind of when my life really changed a lot, I would say. My dad became a single dad, and so he was essentially our provider uh, after that. And so, not having my mom around was really a big change in my life, because it was from one day to the next, and it was like I never knew from her ever again. So, I mean, now it's been almost 15 years and still don't know where she's at. I don't know if she's around. I don't know anything about her. Right. So I think at that point, I didn't really process it. So it was just a lot of going back and forth on what could I have done differently. But I mean, now I know that it wasn't my fault, why they split up. So essentially, yeah, like my dad basically raised us, and it was good. There were some really, really hard moments. I think after that point was when my dad fell into depression, and with depression comes a lot of ways to cope, not so good ways to cope, which
Right,
include drugs, alcohol, materialistic things, just like very sporadic, very I guess the household, like after that happened, was very unpredictable. Like we never knew what was going to happen. I was in doubled up households, living with different family members, and honestly, just like I think there came a point where I didn't trust my dad
right.
because
And
you know
before you keep going, I kind of want to slow down if that's okay,
yeah.
and I want to kind of go back and kind of talk about these kind of things because I know for me personally, like, and I have I relate to your story in that I was raised by a single parent. My father actually left too when I was well, I was younger, so I didn't really know him, and so even to this point, I can't say I know where he is, and I know that that's a struggle. One, living in a household with a single parent is very difficult, and we see that through the statistics now of just it's a what is the word I'm looking for? It is a um
A
not
struggle.
it's a yeah it's a struggle. I'll just put it there. I was looking for a specific word, but it's not coming to my mind. Um, but yeah, we see that now in our culture that single parent houses are becoming more common,
Right.
and it has negative effects really. And also dealing
Mhm.
with the unknown, because regardless of like whether we have healing, whether we have understanding or not, now as adults and older and being older, at that time, not knowing is really hard.
Right.
Not really knowing why, what the reasoning behind, or the where. I mean, the details. So I don't want I don't mean to like get back into too many details or anything like that, but I didn't want to rush through that either because I know
Mhm.
that there's going to be someone in our audience who maybe has been through the same thing and who maybe hasn't gotten to a healing point yet.
Mhm.
So, if you wouldn't mind, could we talk
Mhm.
a little bit about that and
Yeah.
maybe how you went from that
Mhm.
stage in life? You said you were 9,
Mhm.
until maybe to kind of now and see how you've kind of healed or dealt with that.
Yeah, I think it was really hard at the beginning, like I said, and it was a lot of questioning, like why this happened. Um, how could I have avoided it, or what could have been different? But ultimately, I think it took a lot of time to be able to get past that. And there were, people that did come in and out of my life, but it wasn't the same. It was never going to be the same. And so I think I just had to deal with that fact that, you know, if she wasn't going to come around, then it just didn't matter to me
Right.
anymore. And I mean, up to I really did value the relationship that I had with my dad. So I think that kind of took place of the relationship that I would have had with my mom. So at
Right.
the same time, I think uh, honestly, just forgetting about it. I know it's really hard, but now I like think about it, and maybe I should have taken it a different direction.
Hmm.
But I was young, I was naive, I didn't know. I kind of just tried to patch it up and act like nothing ever happened. But I
Right.
think now I've gone through those motions, and now I'm like, okay, I feel like I have a healed heart, and that part of me, it's like it sucks, right? But I don't dwell on it anymore.
Right. Well, I think we have to come to a point where, especially as, I mean, as children, it's hard to understand, and we do look to blame ourselves to a point, or to
Mhm.
see if we had a fault in it some way. So coming to the acknowledgement or realization that it's a situation and we can't change it. But it has nothing to do with us. Adults make their own decisions,
Right.
and especially parents, they make their own decisions. Whatever the situation is, we don't have control of that as kids, as children, as kids, and even as adults now. What regardless, like I'm an adult now, and I'm in my 30s, and I still don't know my father, and I don't know what he's doing. So
Mhm.
even then, even as an adult, I still have to accept that I won't know it all, and we have to just kind of heal without that understanding. You know. Um,
Right.
Another thing I wanted to address there too is I mean I mean we know each other personally as well, and we've had talks before, and you know a little bit about what I struggled with in my life, so I can definitely also relate in that when sometimes when people don't know how to deal with their emotions, bringing up your dad, and that you use the word coping. He went to cope with the wrong things, and I could totally relate with that. And I mean, well, first of all, that's also not the child's fault either.
Mhm.
Because I was raised in a household with the same thing as well, with alcohol, just as the coping mechanism. And I guess pick up maybe back from there, and kind of how you dealt with that transition or into that stage of your life.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, that whole coping mechanism really impacted my life in the sense of, we had to be moving a lot, and we had to be living with different family members. So, um, I moved when I was in middle school from my hometown, and it was a very big change for me because this is somewhere where I grew up for 12 years of my life, right? And so I was very scared. I was very scared for change, but um at this point in time my dad was actually sober, and he wanted to make a good choice for our family and to give my brother and I a better future. So we decided to move, and my dad had a job opportunity, so we ended up moving, and it was great. I mean, the job that my dad had gave him so many opportunities, but it was one of those things where whenever he fell into depression and whenever he was just not himself, like everything went, really bad. There was a point where even his boss, would see him drunk, and he would go to work like that, and it's like you can't function like that, right? And
Right.
so um, we ended up living in Texas for about a year. And then ultimately, I mean, it came up again to where this addiction took over his life. And he honestly could not take care of us anymore. So then we moved again, and um, we moved to Colorado, where we're at now, which was almost 10 years ago. And at that point, it was one of those things where, so, I mean, we have a lot of family here. So we would always come visit during the holidays. And it was one Christmas where, they told us, you're not going back. Like, your dad cannot take care of you anymore. Like, you're not going back
Right.
to Texas. So it was one of those things where we thought we were coming here for Christmas vacation, and then we ended up staying, right? And we've been here ever since. And we had to register to school, and it was just a very big change again,
Again,
right?
yeah.
And so, yeah.
In terms of addiction, and I know pretty well too. Um, that you try to be. I mean, you try to play this role like if you're functioning like as an adult, but in reality, and I'll admit it that I had many times where I felt like, and well, maybe I didn't feel like it, but I had to realize that I couldn't even take care of myself, and so I could totally understand how. I mean, and I'm sorry. I know that sorry is not going to change anything or take anything back, but I know what that must have felt like. I know that I've done the same to other people, and so I just like heartfelt to like apology that you've had to deal with that because I know firsthand the 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 hurt and trauma that can come from that, that unknown, and that looking at a parent who you can't trust, you can't rely on them to do their job essentially. So I'm sorry that you've had a your life was up to that point. Um, but you had mentioned that you mean is a big change again. It was a change of state, right? Again,
Mhm.
and can you kind of pick up there? Who did you stay with, or who helped in that situation?
Yeah. So, my brother and I stayed with my aunt and uncle, and we were here, and so they got us enrolled into school, and we ended up living in their house. Right, they opened up their house to us, and yeah, I mean, I started here freshman year, so my first year of high school, which was also very scary. So I think like it was just a lot of change all of the time and trying to get used to that. And we ended up so we ended up moving, and then my dad moved here with us. So he ended up getting a little bit sober, drove up here, and it was a lot of going back and forth too because, my family here did not want a drug addict in their
In their
household.
home, yeah.
Right. So it was between like my dad getting sober and living with us, or um my dad, finding another place to stay because I mean, I would agree with him. I wouldn't want somebody like that in my household.
Right. No, that totally makes sense, and it is unfortunate when that happens because the person needs help, but it's there has to be like a line somewhere where it becomes too far too unhealthy to risk helping. Does that make sense? And so yeah, I totally understand that being a hard situation. We know each other too, just for the audience to know that through my wife and her parents, you kind of want to say their role, and maybe like I know that most of the family is Christian born again
Mhm.
believers. um how did that start, maybe like impacting your life in a different kind of way?
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, I moved here, and once we were here, we ended up staying with different family members because we were just in very we didn't know, it was very unpredictable where we were going to live, couch surfing on different family members homes that were able to open up their homes to us. And I guess before I go a little bit into that, we I started to trust my dad again, right? And we were finally stable enough, and we ended up getting a duplex, a home, the
Hmm.
three of us, and it was the same thing again, right? He fell into the addiction even more. He was probably the worst at this point. He had to have surgery done because he was hurt, and it was just a big mess. So my dad wasn't working. He wasn't working, and we had rent to pay. I remember being 16, getting a job, trying to maintain not only myself but also like my brother and my dad, and trying to pay for rent. But how was I gonna be making $7 an hour, and trying to pay rent? Like it was just not gonna happen. So we ended up getting evicted, And that was like another big change, right? Because it was like I was starting to trust my dad, and then, boom, another change. So we got evicted. And yeah, that's what led up to moving in with Crystal's parents, which are my cousins. And it was it really, at first I didn't know. I mean, it was like I said, it was very unpredictable. Like I didn't know where I was going to go. Keep in mind I was still in high school at the time,
Right.
right? So not only was I a full-time student, I was also working. I was also a sister, a daughter, right? So it was just like a lot of roles at such a young age, and I was like, how am I doing this? You
Yeah.
know? And so yeah, so they ended up, extending their arms and welcoming us into their home, and making space for us where they could. And little would I know now that that would be like the most impact that would make, I think, my walk, where I'm at now,
Hmm.
because of the way that they are, their customs, their values, what they value, what they think is important, when it comes to living out a Christian life and being involved and just helping others. And you can really see their fruits, and it is because of the love that they have for Jesus, right? It's
Right.
like, how can they love they love others just as much as they love Jesus, and they want to help others, right?
Yeah. And shout out to my in-laws. Um, I don't think there's. I don't I mean too as well that if someone needs help and they're not going to say no a lot of times. Not in a bad way either. I know that could sometimes be thought of as a bad thing, but they really do try to live out that love of Jesus for others,
Hmm.
and they'll even put themselves in an uncomfortable way or an uncomfortable position or in and like extending themselves, and they figure it out, because they have that heart to help others.
Right.
And so shout out to them. um you said it was your freshman year. So, and then also that you were trying to like support and take on a role of an adult
Hmm.
basically at 16. um and in reality, no kid should have to do that um ever in their life. They should be able to you live their childhood.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, I know that I was one of those as well that kind of tried to take adulthood too soon, and it's difficult. It's not meant for people unless they're an adult. You know what I mean? That's comes with age and comes with the experience and being able to be taught by an adult first.
Right.
So that's very difficult as well. But you've always been very, from my perspective, always been very motivated, very dedicated into when you set. It seems like when you set your mind to something, you get it done. So I just commend you on that, and that's really great, and it's a really good characteristic to have, and especially like in those hard times. But
Hmm.
as you are matured and you're older now, and it's shown in your life, do you want to kind of pick up from there and go into maybe the next stages of your life?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I was in high school, so a lot of these things were happening, and I was trying to graduate. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I just didn't know how I was going to get there. um like I said, keep in mind there was times where my dad was just not in my life, or times where he was, and the times that he wasn't, he was actually living in the streets.
Hmm.
I remember, grabbing his stuff, and it was all because he chose the drugs and the alcohol over his kids and his family. And he would pack up his bags. I would take him to the shelter, and he'd be like, "Leave me here. Like, this is what I want to do." And I would go months at a time without seeing him. I wouldn't know, where he was at, what he was doing. And honestly, the only times like I heard from him was when he was hospitalized, because he was either, like, um ran over, or he was like got beat up, or he was just trying to get sober, so he would end up in the hospital. So I was just very like I really did take on that parental figure, not only for like my brother, but also for my dad, which it was like, I was trying to be a child, to be a teenager, But I also had to be an adult at the end of the day. So, um, like I said, at this point, it was yeah, I was senior year of high school, and I was like, so now I know there has to be a next step in my life. I just didn't know what that looked like. I'm the first in my family to go to college. Uh, I didn't really have anyone to pave the way for me or to show me or to fill out applications. Like I didn't have that. So I took it, for myself to be able to set that path. So I ended up getting into community college through a scholarship my first year, and that honestly really helped me. The people that I met were extremely helpful. That I still talk to, my mentors. Really, once I shared my story, they were like, okay, like how can we help you? How can we help you be successful when it comes to to your career? So I ended up going to community college. I got my associates in 2 years. Um, but when I guess backtrack a little bit, uh, so I got accepted to community college, which I was extremely happy because I was like, well, it's a start somewhere, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember uh, the summer before I started college, um, we had actually been in Section 8 housing. Right? My dad was in Section 8 housing, and he was living on his own, and there came a point where he was like, I'm ready for you and your brother to move in, like we need to be a family again. And I was like, I agree. And so we were just testing the waters, like, is he like real this time, or
Mm-hmm.
is he gonna come back? Because when I graduated, he was actually not there at my graduation. And I kind of, it was heartbreaking, but I ended up finding out that he got so drunk that the cops found him on the ground on the street. So they took him in to the rehab.
Right.
So my dad was in and out of rehab all the time, so this was something that I was already used to. And he apologized. He's like, sorry, that I wasn't able to be there. And I was like, it's okay, you'll make it to my college graduation, like no worries. Like I was also, I think I started to become very forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, if I build up all of this for my own parent, like that's not going to do me any good, right? Like I still wanted to have a good relationship. So it was my first week of college, and my dad got really really sick. And I was still working two jobs, right? And so ended up taking him to a hospital. It was one of those things where it was very normal, I guess, to take him to the hospital so he could like sober up. And little did I know that that time was going to be different, because he wasn't going to come out of it, right? And so when a week later after I took him in, he passed away from kidney and liver failure due to the alcoholism and the drugs and just everything that he was putting into his body. And at this point, it was my first week of college, and I was like, okay, I have, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I can either drop out or I can keep going. I guess the dropping out part kind of was like a little bit of an option, but not really. I was like, no, like instead of using it, to bring me down, like I'm gonna use motivation, and I'm gonna keep. And so yeah, that's what I did. And it took me a while to like realize what was happening. It probably took me like 5 or 6 months to like actually start to grieve, which was a hard part, because I was just so like entertained on like your college and like being involved. So it was very hard to get past that. And it took like, after I started going through the grieving process, it probably took like another 6 months to a year to like actually be okay. And I was like, I'm not gonna be okay. Like my dad was, my only parent left. Like, what am I gonna do without him? Right. And so I don't, now that I think about it, it's, God gave me the strength to keep going, and, my amazing family around me, always praying for my brother and I to be able to, move past this really hard stage of our lives, and supporting us, and, doing everything that they could in their position to be able to help us, get past this, and be there for us during these hard times. So yeah, so I ended up graduating from community college in 2 years. Then the pandemic hit, and I was still I was looking at transferring, but I was actually studying something that wasn't so much for me, but it was for my dad, and it was to go into pharmacy, right? Like he wanted me to be a pharmacist, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, sure. But it was so hard, and I knew it wasn't something that I liked.
Right.
So I ended up doing another year at the community college and switching my major over to business.
Mhm.
And I was like, I think this kind of aligns a little bit more with what I want to do.
And
And
before you go into your transfer,
yeah,
I wanted to just put in there that, I mean, I know firsthand, you know firsthand, just the damages and the pain and the, I mean, not just the damage to the body, but the damage to people around us that drugs and alcohol have on our lives. Um, and I'm like a firm, like, you know, this, that I'm firmly against drinking, and just in all ways. I don't care if it's even just one, but because I know like the amount of damage that alcohol and like drugs have done, and not just my life, but in a lot of people's lives. So you know, and you know that we're you know, our heart is sorry. We grieve with you at that time, and I mean, as a family, the family was there, and I mean, there's no words. I mean, I'll just be honest. There's no words to express, you know, are sorry for the situations that you've had to endure. But I do say endure because you have, and you've prospered, even, I would say,
mhm,
not just gotten through,
mhm,
but I feel like God has always had a plan, and His hand over your life
mhm,
to be able to come out of situations like that, and to be where you are now. And you know, you like, just in your testimony, you're just sharing how you had just finished with your associates, and just I just see like the blessings that, even although we go through hard situations, although things are not always great, you're able to see where God has, you know, blessed you, and what He has. And it's hard to see that sometimes. I know I was a person who was mad at God because of my situation, and I didn't see it in a positive way at all. Anything, but yet you still maintain, and you still kept pushing when I gave up. So I just give you props for that
mhm.
in so many ways. But yeah, I just wanted to cut in real quick there before, I don't want to skip over
Yeah.
that part. But if you wanted to pick up kind of before your transfer.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was definitely hard, but like I said, it was one of those things where if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And I ended up transferring to a 4 year university, and I lived in the town for 2 years, which was, a blessing in itself. The fact that uh, my aunt and uncle were still able to, keep their house open for me when I would go home for the holidays. And, my brother was still living with them. And they, really did do me a favor because they took care of him while I was kind of taking care of, my future and what that was going to look like. Um, so it was a really good experience. Went to school for 2 years, and I actually graduated last year, and started my job. But even throughout college, I was facing a lot of anxiety, not so much depression, but I just always felt anxious, always those racing thoughts. I always
Mhm.
had those, and I was just why am I feeling this? Why am I having these thoughts? And I remember I would put on podcasts, Christian podcasts, and that would like soothe me. But it was like at this point, my walk with God was in and out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It was kind of like whenever I felt anxious, like I knew that going to God was
Mhm.
going to make me feel better, but it never like really crossed my mind to say like I want to do this. forever. Like, I want to feel like this forever.
Right.
Um, I was still doing not I was never that type to like go out every night, drink party. I was very mellow, but I was lukewarm. Like, I didn't take my Christian life seriously. And I knew that when I started to get anxious again, I knew what I had to do.
Right.
And it would help me. And it was, I don't know. I guess now that I think about it, I'm like, why didn't I just do that from the beginning? And so uh I was I was very blessed, like I said, to be able to get through that those 2 years in college. And it sucked sometimes because people around me, like my roommates, like all had parents, right? So that was like a big transition and for me to be able to see that. But it was never in a way of that I was upset or that I was jealous of my family or my friends, having parents, because I feel like I lived through that and I really did enjoy seeing their relationship with their parents, because I'm like, wow, like I can do this in the future for my kids, like although I
Right.
don't have that, it doesn't matter. Like, this is my situation. And I think for the longest time I was like, I just want to be normal. And honestly, like a lot of the friends that I have in college don't know about my story. And it's not because I didn't want to share, but it wasn't like something that I share when I first meet somebody.
Right.
Like if it comes up, it comes up. And if it doesn't, like, like it was never one of those things where I let it define me and I
Mm-hmm.
made an excuse like, oh, well, I can't do this because I don't have parents, or I can't do that because I don't have parents. It was never like that for me.
Right.
I always wanted to see, and honestly, like I didn't want to be treated differently. I didn't want people to feel bad for me. So I just acted normal,
Yeah.
which like up to now this is my life, this is my normal life. And even though it's not normal for everyone, right? I think I've learned to normalize um, just being on my own and not having those parental figures to, my mom and my dad.
Right. And that is difficult, and I could see where you're coming from, definitely. And you've never come across to me as a person seeking pity, anything like that, or trying to make yourself at a disadvantage. That's the word I was going to say earlier, a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I told you to come to me. But anyways, back on track. You've never put yourself off to be that, and like I said, you have so much determination and dedication and just a good work ethic, in that despite the circumstances, despite being at a disadvantage compared to a lot of other people, you never complained about it. You never, you just push through, and you continue to push through. Um, I like how you said earlier that you knew what to do when you felt like that, when you felt like the anxious feeling or the racing thoughts. And I know that so many people do the same thing, I can recall even times in my life where I've done that. Even though was angry, even though I said that I didn't want anything to do with God, I know that there was times then that I would cry out to God at my lowest, and it would only be for that moment, it was never really serious. It was just because I needed something.
Mhm.
But God is faithful. God is good. And in Romans 5:8, it says that God demonstrates His own love, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So, and it's not exactly the same thing, but even though when we're not fully committed to Him, and although we might live a life that sometimes is contrary to Him, I'm kind of speaking more to my case here, but you mentioned like being in, halfway out, and we know that what the Bible says kind of about that as well. And God's not very doesn't look favorably on that. So that I'm trying to change that into this situation, and that although we act like that, God's still faithful. God still helps us. God's still so loving to all of us, regardless of where we are in life. And I see there you were kind of starting to see God's role in your life a little bit. Also, I wanted to touch on that. Um, you had kind of, I don't want to misquote you, but you had kind of said that you just want to kind of normal life, and that you want to then now give that to your kids when you have them.
Mhm.
Do you kind of want to just pick up where you were left there, and not to speculate into your future life,
Mhm.
but kind of how that maybe has motivated you is kind of what I'm trying to ask. Just having that something that you didn't have for yourself, I guess.
No, and I say it all the time, and it starts with breaking those generational curses, right?
Right.
And sometimes I feel like I am running into a brick wall because I am trying to break all of these strongholds, break all of these things that were placed or have been a part of my past generations, right? Whether it's financially, whether it's education, whether it's living out a Christian life, whatever it might be. I feel like at this point in time, I am kind of like leading that. Not only, um, it's not for me anymore, right? It's for my kids, it's for my grandkids, it's for like future generations to come, so they can say like, wow, like even though this person went through so much, like we are, so it's more about how can I impact my future, and not only in my family, right, also in like my community,
Right.
and so to seeing how that actually plays out with what I've been doing now, and I do feel like it starts right now, right. And
Right.
we can't stay, still, and we can't be hiding behind the curtains and expect something to happen. And I think that's how a lot of people are. It's like, well, somebody else is going to do it, and it's like, no, you have to take action, whatever it might be in your life, and you have to get to it.
Right. And also, one person you might have left out is your brother.
Mm.
Your brother, you're breaking those off, those generational curses off
Right.
for him as well, being that, you, in a way, you guys are a household now, your own household. It's not under a parent necessarily, but it's you guys.
Mhm.
And so by you taking that initiative and doing the hard stuff, the hard work, and pushing yourself to a closer relationship with God, and breaking those things off of your bloodline, then you're setting him up too, and you're showing him the way too. Since we tend to mimic or imitate our parents, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So by you doing that and being persevering through that and enduring through that, you are setting up the groundwork for the next generation. So yeah, that's exactly what you're doing, and that's good that you're doing that and acknowledging that. I think so
Mhm.
many people think or don't realize that they're spiritual as well in our natural world. So that's great that you're doing that. Do you want to kind of maybe talk about how you went from the halfway in, halfway out
Mhm.
to kind of where you are now?
Yeah. Yeah. So it all happened probably about a year ago. I was going through a lot of big changes. Like I said, I was in my last year of college, trying to figure out what was going to happen next. And I tend to, or I'm still kind of do, but I was like, I want control over my life. Like, this is what I want my life to look like. And if it doesn't look like this, I don't want it. Or like, it has to look like this. And so I ended up, applying for jobs, and I was like very set that I was going to move. And, a
And this
lot
is
of,
out of college. This is after graduating.
no, this was before
Before
graduating.
graduating?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is me trying to get a job and trying to get my life figured out before I graduated to,
Mm,
kind of just be at peace during the summer and had something set up.
right.
And so a lot of things happened like in my personal life. Went through a breakup, and it was hard because I was like, I went through all of these things and I felt like I was alone. And at that point is when I started to seek God even more, because I was like, why is this going on in my life? But now, I mean, a year later, I feel like God has revealed so many things to me through that phase of my life. And then also, how I was putting my career at such a high standard. It was like all or nothing,
Yeah.
right? And I think about it now, and like my thing was like, oh, I want to move and I want to like do all of these things, right? But look at like, I got a job, thank God, that is local, right?
Right.
And I think about it, and it's like, if I would have moved, I wouldn't have been where I'm at now. You know, I wouldn't have heard your testimony. I wouldn't have be so close to you and Crystal now, right?
Right.
And it's like, I don't think I would have been able to do this by my own on it, in for if I was in another state, if I
Right.
was distant, and I think I would have just probably distanced myself even more, not only from my family, but from God, right? So I think that was like a breaking point to me, and I started seeking God, and I just wanted to fill that void, And I think that's when a lot of things started to come out to light with like my my younger life. I was like
Mhm.
starting to realize a lot of things. I'm like, is this why I am the way that I am? Right. And honestly, like just started praying over those and just like, like God heal my heart and my mind because I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Um and so yeah, I thankful to God I got a job before I graduated. Like I said, it was local and yeah, I mean, I ended up traveling over the summer and that's kind of where I fell back. Uh, so it was kind of more like a transactional thing, I only seeked God when I was like when I was down or when I was sad or when I just didn't know what to do, right? And then I would just, life is good, going,
Right. We
about
kind of
my
forget about God at those
right,
times.
right, yeah. And so I think over that time, uh, I went through a lot of things, but at the same time, I God has built me up to the person that I am now, and surrounded myself with the right people. And now, uh Alex talked about this a little bit last week, but um I think that a good point was, your testimony, right? And how that not only impacted you but everyone around us. And I think that's where we started to have more of a relationship and getting to know each other, like what is your plan, or what do you think is your purpose, right?
Right.
And I think that's where it all started, probably what, like 6 months ago now.
Would have been in October. In October, end of October. Yeah, end of
Yeah,
October.
yeah. So now it is one of those things where I think that was my, like, okay, like I can't control anything anymore. And I think even after that, we've had conversations where I'm like, I'm feeling like this, like what do I do? And always like, open your Bible and pray, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
and it is true. And so, I mean, just because we give our lives to Jesus doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect and that our lives are going to be perfect. I feel like you put it well every single time. It's like we it's hard, right? It's
Yeah.
hard. We are going to go through trials, but we can't give up knowing that Jesus is with us, right, at all times. And even though we go through those trials, like we're going to be okay. We're going to come out of that season even better.
Right.
Um, and we're in that season for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. God doesn't do anything without purpose, without intention. It's for us. He's for us. That's the best thing. That's the greatest thing that we have. We have Him on our side, and no matter what situation we're in, we can always have hope in Him. Also, I just kind of wanted to go back too, but since then, I mean, now that you're in a relationship again, right? So yeah, that's been restored. Um, and I see a fire in you that's just, you're applying the same things, like the same principles that you've lived your life by, but to now for God's kingdom. So that's another great thing that I've seen in you. And then also, you know, God also put us in a position um where we have built a relationship now, where we do spend multiple days in Bible studies and book studies and different things. So we have been able to see you grow. We have been able to be there and to help you in those situations. So for like the audience, who if you're like newer believer, find someone who will spend the
Mm-hmm.
time and be invested in your spiritual walk, be invested in the outcome of your life, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and to ensure that that there's growth, and that if there's questions that they have,
Mm-hmm.
you have help. You can come to us for with whatever, or sometimes you'll even come and just bring, oh hey, I read this, what does it mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll help you walk through it and whatnot. But you've been a blessing to our life in many ways as well. Doing starting with a podcast, I know that if I ever need someone's help, I can go to you, and so you've just been a blessing in so many ways, and I see that God's going to do so many great things with you. I think it's just a matter of time, and it's staying dedicated and persevering. Do you? And I know we were gonna we were planning already on a second part, and I didn't want to, you know, spill those details too much, but I have to share at least a little bit. And you, that God has just put a heart and it gave you a heart to serve others.
Mhm.
You kind of made, without going into too
Mhm.
far, you kind of want to just talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think ever since I was in college, I got the opportunity to be able to help others. And whether it was, at work or my classmates or different clubs, I've always had a heart to be able to give back. And, you know, even if it's not financially, I know that time is money, too.
Yeah,
So I volunteer. That's what I do. That's what I do on my free time. I love to give back to the community, to be able to help those that are in need, that maybe might be going through something similar than I did, or maybe not even, right? It's just, giving someone or a helping hand, or just brightening somebody else's day. And I think it's important to be able to do that and to give back. I think ultimately that is where my heart is at, being able to give back to others, because I would hate for someone to be in my situation and not have anyone to go to, and not have the resources, right, that I maybe did. And so it's like, how can I point you to the right direction? What can I do for you? And like I said, I've learned to leave me out of the picture now. It's not about me anymore.
right.
So how can I help others achieve their dreams? Maybe graduate, whether it's graduating, maybe it's being, financially stable, maybe it's um helping out, getting involved in the community, whatever it might be. I mean, that is like you said, where I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and God's giving you a servant's heart for sure. And there's surrounds like in the Word of God that the phrase like the least of these comes up multiple times, and it's just saying that the one who puts others in front of their own needs is the one who will truly be blessed in the end. The one that will be held in high regard in heaven, basically. So I know that God put that heart in you because that's who how Jesus was.
Mhm.
That's who he is, and so I know that God's going to do something great, and He's working. We know that He's always working, even when we don't understand it or see the full picture. So
Mhm.
I'm just excited to see that, and although you've been through a lot of rough situations, a lot of tough circumstances, and just not having maybe like that strong foundation in terms of like parents and stuff like that, someone who to raise you up from when you were young. I just see that God and Jesus has become your foundation now.
Mhm.
So that's really good. I did have a couple things for you though. Would you have? I mean, do you have anything that you could address to the audience in terms of like who maybe have dealt with similar situations in their as they grew up, kind of like you have? Maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, I think definitely having faith that it is just a season in life, but that you are going to get through it. And honestly, to reach out for help, I think it took me a long time to reach out, and because I didn't want to be a bother to anyone. I didn't want to put my issues onto somebody else, but it's not about that. It's the people that really want to help you will, and they'll do it in a heartbeat. It's not an issue, or it's not a bother to them. They are there for a reason, and find those people, find those mentors, find the people around you that have similar, or that have been through similar things, and have made it out through of those situations. Find people that want to see you success. Find people that really do value you and want to see you prosper in whatever area of your life it may be. And most importantly, prayer moves the hand of God. And I honestly, I mean, even though throughout these past few years, with my dad passing away and college, and I I wasn't really, I didn't have a relationship with God.
Right.
And now I look at it and I'm like, it wasn't me that did all of these things. It was God. Why do I say that? Because my family prayed for me, for
Yeah.
us, they prayed for us to get through this. They prayed for God to bless us however he wanted to bless us. Right? And it's like, I think a lot of the times we make the mistake of saying, well, I did it. I was able to do this. I was able to do that. And we come to realize and we need to humble ourselves before God. And it's like, no, I don't think I would have done it, if it wasn't for my family praying for me and for God's hand over my life. Even though I didn't see it then, I see it now. And I'm like, I, yeah, I was strong. And people always tell me, like, you're such a strong person. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't,
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah,
it's something so crazy, but it's like God, it was God this whole time. But now it's like, now that I'm, building a relationship with Him, like I get to see truth that
yeah. No, that's great, and it's great that you acknowledge that and you said that, because he really does, and prayers do matter. Prayers, whether it's our own or whether it's our family members, and for the audience, like if you have similar situations, similar struggles. I just wanted to read Jeremiah 29:11, and many of us know this verse already, and it doesn't make it any less true because more people say it. But it's, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. So God is on our side ultimately. He wants us to succeed. He wants us to have prosperity and blessing in all aspects of our life. And that might scare some people away, that thinking it's just financial, and that's not what I'm talking
is.
about. Talking about in everything, in all aspects of our life, and not just having a huge house or the nicest newest car. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the deeper things, the the fullness of life and joy that you have from that only comes from God. The next thing I wanted to The next thing I wanted to see if you would address kind of the audience or give me, your take on is, for those who are have maybe, are kind of tiptoeing the line, or kind of trying to walk between the two of, lukewarmness between hot and cold. Um, Give them some motivation maybe, or
Mhm.
give them the reason why they need to just jump to one side,
Yeah.
the good side, basically.
Yeah. I'm gonna be on the winning team.
Yes, we can always.
but I think a lot of the aspect or the things that happen is that we find ourselves in, okay, I'll put myself in it. I went through a phase of my life where I was like, uh, like it's fine. I'm still going to church, but I would go out Saturday, Friday nights. I would go out to the club. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, this scenery is not for me.
Yeah,
Like, you just start to feel off. You just, and it's just like, what's my purpose? Like, what am I winning here? Nothing. Right. It was
right.
just like, seeing how people were, and just the way that, I didn't want to put myself in those situations anymore. And so I think you just start to feel it in yourself, right? And it's like, I don't belong here. Like, I need to be doing something else, right? And it's hard when you're around the wrong people, right? Because you'll have those temptations, you'll have those like invites, like, hey, let's go out. It's a Friday night, what are you doing? And so honestly, I think it's just about, when either you're in or you're out, in the sense that you don't know what's going on. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to not take control over anything. Like, once you fully surrender your life to God, you will learn that your plans are nothing compared to what He has in store for you. Right? Like I said, I had this whole thing made up, my 5-year plan, right?
Yeah,
It's not gonna work. And God knows our desires.
yeah,
He really does. And if it's in His will, it will happen. But if it's not, we have to be okay with that not happening.
right.
So I think it really has to do with, what do we see ourselves doing? What is our purpose? And I think that's kind of what started it for me. It's like, what am I doing here? Right? We only have, I think Crystal also talked about this. We only have 80 years, right, on average.
Average, yeah.
Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I need to get up and do something, right? And so I think it's just know that it will come with a sacrifice, but it's so much better than living for.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, it'll be the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it has a greatest reward. It has the greatest reward, far better than anything we could ever get here, with that sacrifice. And then that I want to kind of speak on that, and that you felt like out of place. You felt
Mhm.
like, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
And for those people who maybe feel that same way, it's like they don't feel fulfilled. They wonder what their purpose is and whatnot. I mean, that's the Holy Spirit calling you. calling us when we're in a situation we shouldn't be in, maybe, or when there's more, when God has more for us and He's not content leaving us in this, less than good situation. In John 6:44, it says, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws them, and I'll raise them up at that last day." So it's saying, that the Holy Spirit will pull us. It will pull us out of the, even if we're not following God, even if we're, an addict like I was, but that day that, God saved me, I could feel Him tugging at me, like I'll save you, and I said this before, I'll save you if you let me, just have to say yes. So for anybody who's feeling like that and out of place and in the clubs or in the bars or drinking or whatever, and you have that void, I mean, listen to that beckoning, that call of the Holy Spirit, and give God a chance, and He won't disappoint. And also just fully embrace it, Because so many times I think we, and I say we like just as a general statement, but so many people will like tiptoe or like not just jump in, just jump in is what I'm trying to say. Jump into the fullness of what God has for you, because when we only test the waters and we only, or we're hesitant, really, God is I want to put this in the right word, not hindered, but we don't allow Him to move how He wants to move. And God is a gentleman. He won't force us to do it. So, and not that God is hindered by us, like in His power and His might, because we know that He is all powerful and almighty. But He will only do what we will agree with or do with. You know what I mean? Not deal with. Allow Him to. Yeah. Well, I had mentioned earlier, I gave a little teaser that we're gonna do a part 2, and we're gonna kind of talk about what's going on now in life, in the current day. But I just want to thank you for coming on here and having the courage and the boldness to share the difficult situations you've been in, and how God has gotten you through them. It is a testimony or witness of the goodness of God. So I guess I'll just give you one last opportunity if you had any last words for the audience before we go today.
Yeah, I think overall my life is just starting still.
Right.
I'm young. But even if you're older, younger, wherever in life you may be, just know that God has a plan for you, and don't give up. Really surround yourself with the people that love you, people that encourage you, people that want to see you do better. Um, some people can be jealous or, say, well, why do they have this, but I don't, right? And it's like, we're all winners. As long as we're all following Jesus, we're all winners, right? So it doesn't matter. The materialistic things don't matter. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is, having a relationship with Jesus, and being able to say, that He really transformed my life.
Praise God, and amen to that. Well, that's about all we have for tonight. I want to thank you, the audience, for joining us and for watching this video. And I encourage you to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. If you have any prayer requests as well, leave them in the comments, and someone will be praying. That is a promise. Well, we will catch you on the next one. Thank you and have a good day.